Today, my guest is Professor Maurizio Zollo. I'll keep my introduction short to maximize our time with him. In the next 30 minutes or so, we'll talk about Maurizio as a person. Professor Zollo is a thought leader and an esteemed scholar, and finally is a mentor to many PhD students and junior faculty. For the sake of time, I'll skip many of his accomplishments and give you a very quick snapshot. Professor Zollo directs the Golden, which is a global organizational learning and development network for impact program, is founder and president of a dedicated nonprofit foundation, and a second research program on the neuroscience of innovation and sustainability decisions. His research involves international institutions, including the UN, EU, OECD, and the World Bank, and is the author of over 50 publications that appeared in some of the most respected journals in the field. He has served as editor-in-chief, associate editor, or editorial board member of a dozen leading academic journals in strategy and organization studies. He has served for a decade on the executive committee of the Academy of Business and Society, which he helped establish. For the SMS, he chaired the Innovation and Knowledge and Behavioral Strategy Interest Groups and was the founder and chair of Stakeholder Strategy Interest Group. He also served as a member of the executive and research committees of the strategy division of the AOM. Thank you, Maurizio, for joining us.
Thank you for the honor of having me. I really appreciate it.
Maurizio, what did you want to become when you were a child?
That's a wonderful question. My childhood was actually quite different from the standard one. I was born with a major problem at my eyesight. I can only see about 10% of normal vision and very, very photophobic. So the light hurts my vision. So I couldn't do the normal things that any kid could do, right? Doing sports and stuff like that. So for me, you know, the early years were, first of all, looking for things that are really interesting for me, and you know, learning was actually the most interesting part. You know, wanted to know about the world and discovering how the world works. So that's been in a way somewhat forced, but then it became a pleasure. And so yeah, a bit of a distinctive way of looking at things.
And can you pinpoint the earliest moment of awareness between foreign versus domestic?
Oh, for me, learning about the world meant fundamentally going around. I was very lucky. My parents, despite my problem with my eyesight, were bold enough to send me out to discover the US and England and other places since my early teenage years. Yeah, and obviously the more I discovered, the more I enjoyed it, and so it was really part of my development. So an early international scholar from that perspective.
And what made you decide to get into academia?
That's a different question. So basically, I started actually working in both investment banking in New York for Merrill Lynch, and then I moved to McKinsey. Great experiences, but I realized pretty soon that I wanted to actually go more in depth, wanted to understand the problem. Particularly consulting is great because it allows you to understand a specific problem, but never really gives you the time to understand it deeply enough. And so that it was that frustration on one hand, and at the other, it was the fact that I was, you know, trained as an economist, monetary economist, and so in the back of my mind was always kind of research oriented, you know, thinking. And so it was actually at some point I decided to drop, you know, the golden cage of McKinsey and move to academia.
Perfect. What's something on your CV that people might find interesting? What is something not on your CV that people might find interesting?
Well, I think people might find interesting the fact that I have been practicing meditation for about almost 30 years now. And I'm doing it every day, enjoy it every time. It's a wonderful experience. Actually, it really changed my life for the better, in many different dimensions.
Interesting. But if you stopped what you're doing today, what's the second best career path for you? What's the second best alternative?
I think I would try to enter the international institutions or international political arena. I think that we as academics are particularly well endowed to contribute, especially as business academics, to make this world a better place, but we're not doing it, and we're not necessarily equipped with the right kind of mindset to do it. But we do have the potential, and I think I would like to, I would try to express it and develop it, and that's the context that I would be curious to explore.
Looking back, do you have any regrets? Something that you wish you would have done but you didn't?
That's an interesting point. I'm actually quite happy about what I've been doing. I feel quite satisfied. But music is something I've done. I play guitar since I was 10. At some point during my early 20s, I had like 2 or 3 different groups from rock and jazz and so on. And the fact that I had to drop it after a few years for obvious reasons and professional reasons, that's always been a little bit. I still play guitar from time to time, but it's I regret that I didn't kind of develop it.
What are you most proud of?
Well, I'm very proud of my family, my wife and my daughter. I'm very proud of what I have accomplished so far in academia, of course. But I'm very excited about what I'm currently trying to do at Imperial College with the new research center that I launched a couple of years ago, the Leonardo Center. It is a really bold attempt to essentially rethink the type of role that we have and the type of research we make. We do together with business, and more importantly, together with all the other scientific fields, right? Cross-disciplinary work in field experimental logic. So to try to understand what are the better ways, more socially relevant and impactful ways of doing business together with business, and doing so with field experiments. That's pretty bold.
This is interesting.
I'm very proud of that. Yeah.
So can you give examples? For instance, what are you guys working on?
So the center has established, first of all, research collaboration with 15 different research centers at Imperial College only, across all the relevant disciplines, starting from climate change and environmental impact to health and social sciences and so on, right? It also obviously leverages the golden community that you've mentioned kindly, which is a global community of scholars, about 150 in 60 different universities. So that's the attempt to create the cross-disciplinary expertise. But the key idea is to engage companies in a number of programs that builds on, first of all, on a unique digital data set that we created with some cutting edge machine learning algorithms that basically encompasses all the sustainability initiatives that are available on the internet with sustainability reports, right? So these are millions of initiatives, and classify them across SDGs, and basically that's the basis, the baseline that we use to work with companies to design new ways of or innovative ways to deal with the core elements of any organization, right? Governance, incentive systems, control systems, leadership models, supply chain, cultural change. I mean, all the key. We've developed about 12 different what we call studios, where essentially groups of scholars, right, interested in the same phenomenon, let's say incentive systems, work together with companies. We have some companies that have become our founding partners at Leonardo, founding it at the tune of £2.5 million each over 5 years. And they're willing to open up for the first time. This is really new, by the way. Open up, being willing to not only being interviewed and so on, but actually to do these kind of experimentations with their own systems, with their own people. And that's the novelty, that finally, not only we have gathered the courage and the goodwill to engage companies on today's and future, rather than always looking back on what they've done in the past, right? With experimental designs, but also they have started to consider this actually as something really important. This is in the context of, the transition towards sustainable and integrated logics of business, but it can be done also in the context of digitalization or globalization or any other major problem that they feel. It's just that we have not dared to ask in a serious way and with the right type of engaged scholarship proposals.
But Maurizio, this is such a huge undertaking. I mean, this is a huge initiative. A centralized logic of very decentralized ideas floating around under one roof. This is quite a huge undertaking.
It's actually quite. I mean, the whole idea. That's why we're engaging scholars not only across all the disciplines at Imperial College, but also scholars across the world, right? Through Golden. It's an open door, right? So anybody who's interested in this is more than welcome to join. The data that I was talking about is going to be a common good. Okay, we're creating it, and we are going to. In fact, we have a research committee of about 10 very senior scholars that across the world, right? Not at Imperial. I'm the only one at Imperial, who are meeting. We're meeting every month to decide how to develop and how to use the common good for research, for the benefit of the whole community of scholars.
Fascinating. So how do you explain your research to people who don't read your work regularly? Say you're stranded, but these are commoners. You're stranded in a pub, people don't know anything about you. How do you explain your what you do?
So there's one overarching question that has characterized pretty much everything I've done, which is how do companies evolve? How do organizations evolve? Meaning they change and learn to change. And that is the overarching question, the theory piece, of course, that we did with I did with Sid Winter, that has received quite a bit of citations, but hopefully it has made also a contribution. But more importantly, it has been driving a lot of my empirical work. At the beginning, it was in the context of corporate strategy, alliances, acquisitions, and then bit by bit, it evolved towards much more, if you want, fundamental change processes like sustainability-driven transformational change. The reason why I'm been fascinating for the last 20 years or so about sustainability and stakeholder theory, in particular, stakeholder orientation, right, is the fact that it basically forces companies, managers to think deeply, in fact, rethink the purpose itself of the company, why the companies exists, what kind of value they're supposed to create, for whom they're supposed to create it. And then, of course, once they gave new answers to these questions, then, of course, all the rest changes, right? Governance has to change, leadership models have to change, incentive systems, control systems, and so on, supply chain, everything needs to be aligned with the new purpose. And that's a transformation. That's basically, we're very lucky. We're living a moment when the object of our study, of our research, is going through a fundamental, it's a Cambrian explosion of ideas about how, and first of all, why the business exists and how it can transform its role in society. And we'd better learn how to not only observe the transformational changes, but actually be part of it. And at the same time, and that's the difficult thing, to be able to observe and at the same time enhance the quality and the speed of transformation.
Perfect. Looking back at the research, what are some of the omitted areas, neglected concepts that we should be thinking more of so that it gives us the next
There's a lot
decade?
of work. Fundamentally, we need to reconnect the big questions that we're asking in IBE strategy, more generally in management, the Academy of Management, with this fundamental question about purpose, and being willing to integrate and frankly, eventually rethink the theories that we've developed under this broader lenses. So if we rethink a company as an organization that needs to create very broadly defined forms of value, right? Not only economic value, but hedonic value and others, for a broader classes of stakeholders, and has to be done. That means that those stakeholders will need not only to be listened to and engaged generally, but actually integrated eventually, even in the decision-making processes, right? In governance, in strategic committees, in every functional activity that engages a specific type of stakeholder would need to rethink. We need to basically integrate even the voice of representatives of the stakeholders, right? The purchasing department with suppliers, the sales department with customers, and so on. And that's a different animal, right? We don't know what that animal really is. We know that that's supposed to be a much more useful, fruitful animal for society, right? So it's the type of enterprise that society would appreciate for sure, because of the implicit social and environmental impacts and economic impacts, of course, that it has. And but we don't know what that is, and we are compelled to rethink our theories in this broader terms, with this broader general class, essentially, of models about purpose. And that's a big challenge. It's a big challenge, I think, for everybody, IB, strategy, academy of management in general.
I mean, you're talking about an evolution. I mean, you're talking about progression towards something new, which is based on stakeholder approach and seeking purpose, right? So,
well, studying at the very least, and then eventually witnessing, studying the change in a way that is not only observation, but is also eventually facilitation somehow. That's why I like the experimental design, by the way, because it allows us to be rigorous and get the best quality of causal inference. And at the same time, it helps the object of our study to understand, to first of all, experience directly new and potentially better ways of doing things, and therefore to speed up and improve the quality of the transition that they're trying to make.
I mean, you're talking about towards a new theory, right? And you're thinking about some boundaries of this new theory. And your methodology that you're a proponent of is experimental design, from what I understand. So what will the new theory look like? What will it be like?
Well, I mean, it's not like we need to throw away the current theories. It's just a more generalizable forms of our theories that integrate the fact that companies are not only existing to maximize shareholder profits, shareholder returns. Still maximizing profits. There's nothing that can ever be said about not maximizing profit. The question is profit for whom and for what reason. The way that I've been doing, for instance, is in my teaching, I've redesigned my strategy course from a stakeholder logic. So I teach competitive strategy and corporate strategy. I teach M&A and alliances, basically with the assumption that companies exist in order to create value for a plurality of stakeholders. And even though they might have a much, a narrow definition of what their stakeholders are, right? They might be more or less aware and conscious about the breadth of their stakeholders. But the fact is that they're all very well aware the fact that it's not just investors and customers, it's employees, it's suppliers, and it's even local communities or governments that are critical to not only create company to make sure that the companies exist, first of all, and then growth and profitability. Sure. The license to operate is given by the local communities, right? So any company exists because it was given a license to operate by a city hall wherever they've incorporated. And we taking for granted, they take for granted, and we take it for granted that that license to operate is, once it's given, it's always there. It's not going to be there. Sure. They can take it away.
Sure. So about the advice, for the sake of time, advice portion, what do you wish you'd known when you were starting out? What was the best advice you received from your mentor?
So I had a number of mentors. I've been very lucky, I must say. And they have each obviously given me really deep personal advice uh, for my thinking about the problems that I wanted to tackle. And despite the fact that they were all, and they are all deep thinkers, they all had one thing in common. They really gave me the thirst for empirical validation of yeah, radical innovative theoretical ideas, right? So they were able to push me, or at least I took both the passion for coming up with radical, relevant theoretical concept, but at the same time, really trying to understand the phenomena quite deeply before even trying to apply theoretical ideas. And it's hard. It's hard to do both, right? One typically specializes either in one or the other.
So I want to ask you, where do these creative ideas come from for you? When you're sitting, your mind is wandering in a state of idle curiosity. All of a sudden, you think about, obviously within a framework, you're thinking about something very creative. Where do these ideas come from?
Showers are usually a very interesting places where some creative ideas come. But on a more serious note, one of the reasons why I've created this community, this interdisciplinary community of scholars, and I've done work, as you've mentioned, also with neuroscientists, as well as now with environmental scientists, and we have really health scientists and so on. The thing is, it's hard to walk out of our comfort zone. We are academics, so we are both passionate but also proud of being experts in our own narrow field of knowledge. And we hate the even the idea of looking stupid, right? Or ignorant, more in general, not stupid, but at least ignorant. And that's the barrier, right? The psychological barrier that we have. But we must defeat that barrier. We must bring it down, especially as business scholars. It is actually today more than ever fundamental. We don't have a voice, neither individual nor collective voice. Even the Academy of Management of the IB, AIB, or SMS, even collectively, we don't have a voice in the issues that really matter in the world. Why? Because we haven't really pushed ourselves to go out and really, look ignorant, but at the same time, being willing to share what we know with people in other fields. And build research programs, write research grants, and execute cutting edge, cross-disciplinary research, which, by the way, is exactly what the big research agencies are hoping to fund, and what the serious top quality research journals are dying to publish. Okay. So this is the paradox, right? Our self-imposed cognitive limitations, are essentially inhibiting our capacity to produce the kind of research that would be funded, would be published, and that the world needs. It's pretty stupid, isn't it?
It's very deep, actually. I've been taking notes. There's a lot of things to think about. A couple of items for junior faculty and PhD students, young scholars. Advice that you would give them, takeaways, so that they know what to do, what not to do.
Well, the first one is look for senior scholars, mentors that think broadly, think not only deeply. There are many who think deeply, but you want to look for those who think broadly as well. People who are interested and maybe have experience in working on fundamental societal issues, not just the research question, the business, related business question, but societal issues that have a fundamental business implication. And that, of course, will require, in order to be tackled, the collaboration with other scholars in other fields, social science, natural science, and so on. That's number one. The number two is have the courage to learn methodologies and also eventually literatures, at least you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be a neuroscientist in order to work with neuroscientists. Okay, you need to be a really good business scholar, but who has at least the working knowledge of the language, related to the neuroscientific, issues that you want to study. Okay, what happens in the brain of the manager in a global enterprise when he or she has to make a decision that you're interested in, right? That's a question that is interesting for you, and it's interesting also for neuroscientists, for instance. And not only that, but also not what happens, but also what are for instance, the interventions, the learning processes that might influence in a positive way the type of neural and behavioral processes, and therefore the decisions, the quality of decisions that that manager makes. This is just an example, of course, but it is fundamental for, I think, a junior scholar today to really start thinking about, again, these fundamental issues, start from society, then get into business, and then broaden it up. Once you've made the link, broaden it up to the relevant disciplines that can speak to the same phenomenon, but obviously with different methodological and theoretical lenses.
Beautiful. What's a question that I should have asked you but haven't?
What am I going to do next?
There you go. What are you going to do next?
Well, I really want to. I'm very, very curious to see what's going to happen with Leonardo. As I said, if the initial successes maintain and develop, this could be a start of a new way of doing business research, and that would hopefully allow me to then connect, as I was saying before, to some of the other things that I haven't done, right? That I would like to do in my life, which is be involved and be relevant to the major issues that society is grappling with. So engage not only business leaders, but policymakers, international institutions, and so on. And that's, I'm really curious to see how this will unfold.
Thank you so much, Maurizio. This was very interesting. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience will agree with me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciated the opportunity and enjoyed the process as well. Thanks a lot.